Now, I have drawn a circle of control and a circle of no control. There are a lot of things that we can't control in life, right? Be proactive says, what can you control? What can you do something about? So you're not being a victim. You're not being irresponsible. It's not my fault, and etc. So what I want you to do is, everybody please take a sticky note. Get 2 of them. Everybody have a sticky note? On one, I would like you to put down those things that you cannot control. Okay? Like taxes and death, okay? On the other, I want you to put the things that you can control, that are within your control. All right, now, will you take those sticky note pads and turn to page 7 and take a look at this diagram that you have up here on the chart, and then let's talk to that diagram. Tell me, group, what you cannot control. What's out of your control? Alan, what's out of your control?
What my family members choose to do.
Okay, so family members' behavior?
Exactly.
Okay? Family members, others' behavior. Can I say others? Would everybody agree?
Yes.
Okay, so let's just put down here others. Others. Does this include children?
Yes.
Certainly we can control children. Barbara going, ah. Okay, so that's children, other people. Now, their behavior. What else can't we control of others? Their choices. What else can't we control? Their beliefs, their attitudes, their mindset. Okay, so others we can't. What else can't we control? Their emotions. You can't control their emotions. What else? Time. You can't control time. Can you control the past? Can you control your ethnicity? Can you control who your parents are? Okay, so you can't do that. That's the past. You can't control that. How about the weather? How about the political climate? You can vote, but you can't control it. All right, anything else that somebody has that you can't control? The economy. Very good. Jeff, you are a financier. Okay, so you can't control the economy. You can't control the price of gas. You can't control how long the line is. Now, what then can you control? Your attitude. I'm going to put that down. You can control your attitude to a circumstance. Susan? You can control your actions. And I'm going to put behavior. Is that okay? You can control your actions and your behavior. Pete?
Control what you say.
You can control what you say. That would be one of your actions. You can control your words. You can control how you spend your time health-wise. You can, all of those kind of things. What else can you control?
Schedule.
Pardon?
Schedule.
Your schedule. So you can control your schedule, your time. You can decide what you do. What else is fundamental?
Your outlook.
Your outlook. Can I say thinking? You can control your thinking. You can control your thinking. All right? What else can you? Now this is self-control, isn't it? This is all about me. So this is self-control. Other things you can control.
Friends or relationships.
Friends or relationships. So again, I'm going to go back and say actions and behaviors and how you treat others and so on, you can control that. I'm going to ask this. What about choices? Can you control your choices? Can you choose to come here or not come here? And what about feelings? Can you control your feelings? Now think about that one. Realistically. No, some, yes. Okay, Mr. Rogers says so. Well, what do we say? What do you say? I'm going to say that feelings are going to be on a no control basis. But what can you control when those feelings come?
How you react.
Your reaction. Your reaction to what is happening to you. You can control that. All right? Now, a real critical question, because we're dealing with habit 1, be proactive. How do you feel when you focus your energies and thoughts and you watch TV all day and etc., and you focus on no control, things you cannot control? How do you feel? Depressed. Tired. It's exhausting. Trapped. You can't do anything about it, and somebody changes their attitude, and all of a sudden you're all wrapped up and so on. You with me? How do you feel when you focus on those things you can control? Empowered. Positive. Energized. This is proactivity. Self-control, what you can control, that's being proactive. And this is being reactive. When you live in the world of what other people think and other people say outside, and that determines your mood. Reactive people often consider themselves victims. And they live in the world of regrets. I'm sorry I yelled at you, but the dog just bit me. I'm sorry. They live in the world of regrets. Now, let me just say this. I'm very reactive and very proactive. This isn't good and bad. We're just describing the principle behind be proactive.
In order to understand what it means to be proactive, we need to understand what it means to be reactive. So I'm going to demonstrate this. I want you to imagine these are two men driving down a California freeway. All right? And the speed limit is 65. Is that the speed limit? Okay, 65. And they are both driving 65. All right? And they both have full cars. And one of them has a dog in the car and a wife and some children. The other one's got a mother and some kids in the car, some neighbors. And they are driving 65 miles an hour down the freeway. Now, as they're driving, is this starting to make you nervous, Alan?
No.
Oh. You do this all the time. I'm going to let Dennis open it now. All right. Now, as they are driving down the freeway, at 65, they're parallel. A third car comes from another lane, cuts right in front of them, causes them to slam on their brakes. Everything that isn't tied down in the car hits the windshield, and then that car just takes off. All right. Now, everything hits the windshield. The dog, books, papers, everything hits the windshield. Now, this man is what we call reactive. What do you think he might do that moment? Get mad. Explode. Chase after him. Pardon? Chase him down. Yes, Peter. Road rage, exactly. Yell at the people. Shut up, you kids. Quit crying back there. As if they had anything to do with it. Okay? Now, this man is proactive. The same things happened to him. What might he do at that moment?
Is everybody
yes.
okay?
Is everybody okay? Good. Yes. Okay. Stop. Let's pause for a minute and think that we're all alive. Okay. Now, what I want to ask...
Chase after him.
Then chase after him.
You couldn't hold that back.
Dennis is a former firefighter. He's a tough guy. Okay. Now, what I want to ask you is this. What then is the difference? What's the difference then in being reactive and proactive? Yes, Susan.
One has control and one doesn't have
Okay,
control.
one has control, one doesn't. Excellent. Anything else? Yes,
It's kind
Carlos.
of awareness.
an awareness.
That of what's happened.
Okay,
On one hand, one feels like there was no control. This happened to me, and I'm going to blame somebody.
Okay.
Whereas the other one is, stuff happens, and I'm going to deal with it.
good. Excellent. Okay. Well, let me give you, they're both exactly right, but let me give you the definition that we give, and that is this. When we are reactive, we act in the moment, according to our mood, according to how we feel, according to what has just happened to us. We act. When we are proactive, we choose our response based on our values. Now, let me give you an illustration of that. Let's imagine that you are home in your house, and you're in the living room, and in the bedroom right next to you, you hear your 10-year-old boy swear at his little sister. He calls her something so terrible you had no idea he even knew that word. And you rush in there and you grab him. Now what do you do? What do you do in that moment? Now, this is your son. Is he of value to you? He is. Is the little girl of value to you, your daughter? Yes. And what he has just done? Yes. So do you act in that moment, in that anger, or do you choose your response based on your values? Let me give you another example. I have a dear friend named Bonnie. Bonnie told me this story last summer I want to share with you. She said that her sister from Connecticut called and said, Bonnie, I'd like to bring my 2 teenagers and come back home to the small town where we were raised, and I would like to take them around. I'd like to show them where we grew up, the house, the places we used to hike, places we used to play, everything we used to do. Bonnie said, great, come ahead. I'll pick you up at the airport. You can come and stay with me. So she picked them up. They came to Bonnie's house. It was a hot July time. And they tried to do, Bonnie took them around, drove them around to do and see some things. She knew her sister was really idealistic. She wanted to make it happy for them. They went some places. And on this particular day, the children said they wanted to go to a water park. Well, when Bonnie was telling me about it, she said, I hate water parks. But I said, okay. I sat out in that sun. I was dripping with sunblock and perspiration, and I sat and watched the kids on the slide till 4 o'clock in the afternoon. And I was ready to go home. And my sister said, well, the children are hungry, and we'd like to leave now. Bonnie said, good. And they said, we'd like to go into a nice, cool restaurant and eat. Bonnie said, no way. I've got to go home and take a shower. I'm happy. I will go to a restaurant, but I'm not going to go sit down in a restaurant now. I need to go home and take a shower. And her sister said, the children are hungry. We want to go into a restaurant right now. And Bonnie stood her ground. She said, after I get a shower. The next morning, Bonnie came into the kitchen and her sister was there. And her sister said, there are things we haven't done this week that I wanted to do. I feel like you've gotten your way, and yesterday was the last straw. She absolutely lit into Bonnie. Now, at that moment, what were Bonnie's choices? When someone tears into you or confronts you with something, what are your choices in that moment? What could she have done? What are some things she could have done at that moment?
Well, she could have exploded and maybe defended herself.
Okay, she could have exploded and defended herself. Okay, excellent. Anything else?
Could stop and listen.
Okay, she could have stopped and listened, trying to see where she was coming from. Good. Anything else?
She could explain her values.
She could have explained her values.
And how she felt about herself and how she maintained herself, and thought that was inappropriate to go into the restaurant the way she
Right.
was.
She could have defended herself. Good. Okay. Well, I asked Bonnie, I said, what did you do? And she said, I said to my sister, because she was so angry and out of control, I said to her, thank you. I appreciate your telling me how you feel. I'm going to leave for just about an hour now. Then we'll talk. She said, I went up to my room, stayed there for about an hour. And when I came down, she said, we've decided to go. I said, okay. She said, I've changed our plane reservations and we're leaving tonight. And Bonnie said, okay, If that's what you'd like, I'll take you to the airport. And they left. 2 days later, her sister called, and she said, I'm so sorry. The children cried all the way home. They were so angry that I brought them home early. Now, are reactive people often full of regrets? They are. When we are proactive, we make our response, we choose our response based on our values. When we are reactive, we act in the moment. Now, how does this pertain to family life? Let me ask you this. In your families, when you are reactive, does your influence, your positive influence over family members grow, or does it shrink? It shrinks. And what happens to the trust level in your family when you're reactive? Does it expand, or does it go down? Yeah. We pay a real price in families for being reactive.
Monday morning, and it's raining. A gray, melancholy day. On a day like this, maybe we can be excused for feeling gray and melancholy ourselves. We get into a mood, and the whole day seems to go badly. Don't you feel better when the weather outside is great? But what if you could carry your own weather within you? What about the social world we live in? Don't you feel better when you're treated better? That's being reactive to what we could call the social weather, the social culture. When you carry your weather with you, you can choose to be consistent regardless of how people treat you. That's what it means to be proactive. Being reactive is the opposite of being proactive, not taking responsibility for our own life. You always see yourself as a victim of the weather, of your moods, of someone who has it in for you. Habit 1 is based on the principle that your life is the result of your own decisions, not your conditions, not what's happening around you. That's why Habit 1 is so foundational, so basic. Unless you practice Habit 1, you can never practice the other habits of highly effective people. Years ago, I was doing research in a library in Hawaii. While thumbing through a book, I came across an idea that changed my whole outlook. The author said something like this: between what happens to us, that is the stimulus, and our response is a space. In that space lies our power and our freedom to choose our response. And in those choices lie our growth and our happiness. This insight sunk deep into my heart. Even in the midst of challenging circumstances, we have this exhilarating power to choose how we will respond. For instance, the great Viktor Frankl, the Jewish Austrian psychiatrist imprisoned in the death camps of Nazi Germany during World War II, experienced unbelievable indignities and tortures. He was raised to believe that you are basically a product of your childhood. But while he was in the death camp, he began to observe some very interesting things. Different people reacted differently to the same circumstances. He himself experienced terrible things. Some of his own loved ones were killed. One day they stripped him, put him under lights, and performed experiments upon his body. At that lowest possible point, he discovered what he called the last human freedom, the power to choose your own response to any condition, to anything that happens to you. During his darkest moments, Frankl would visualize himself lecturing to his students in Austria following his release. He pictured himself teaching them about the very experiences he was having then. He came to believe that the most basic human capability of all is that between stimulus and response, man has the freedom to choose. Frankel later determined the thing that enabled survival in the death camps was not necessarily intelligence or survival skills, but a sense of purpose, a contribution yet to be made. This became the basis for his brilliant autobiography, Man's Search for Meaning. It's not what people do to us that hurts us. It's our chosen response to what they do that hurts us. As Gandhi put it, they cannot take away our self-respect if we do not give it to them. We must simply never build our emotional life around the weaknesses of other people. Otherwise, we give them permission to continue to mess up our lives. We give our future away. Several years ago, I was making a presentation on this subject of proactivity, and a woman stood up in the middle of my speech and started to give a speech on her own, spontaneously. She was filled with explosive learning and excitement. You could see in her eyes, her gestures, her body language. And then she sensed the inappropriateness of what she was doing. She sat back down. I could hardly wait until the break to talk to her. "What happened to you?" I asked. She shared her story. She said, "I'm the full-time nurse to an extremely miserable man. He doesn't even acknowledge me, let alone show me any form of appreciation." She went on to explain that this elderly man, entrusted to her care, was absolutely miserable and took his misery out on her. She was becoming more and more depressed and hated the thought of going to work each day and facing this irritable man. All of the other nurses felt the same way. They talked even of his demise, wished for it, hoped for it, while they were taking care of him. Then she said something to me. "For you to stand up there and suggest that I am choosing to be miserable was almost too much. But then, listening to you, I suddenly realized that I do choose to be miserable. Before, I believed I didn't choose it. He made me. But then I realized how dependent I am. I'd given my power over myself to him and his miserable behavior." "As I thought about what you were saying," she said, "I realized I had the power to choose and felt like I had been let out of prison. That's why I stood up. I could not contain myself. I just can't tell you what that means. This feeling of freedom is almost overwhelming. We have the power and the freedom to choose, to create our own weather each day. As Bishop Fulton J. Sheen once said, each of us makes his own weather, determines the color of the skies in the emotional universe which he inhabits.
What happened? Using this chart, where was the nurse? Wasn't she a victim? You know, who's making me unhappy? He is. Listen to the language. Is this reactive or proactive? You make me so mad. Why?
You're giving your control over to another person.
Exactly. How about this language? If only we had more money, we could be happy. Reactive or proactive? Why?
Giving circumstances in order to be happy.
Yeah, you see, I can't be happy until we have more money, etc. There's quite a principle involved, isn't it? You and I are responsible for our own attitude, thinking, and choices at any time. Now, this is a hard thing sometimes, but what I would like to do, if you believe there's truth to that, put a line there and write your name right in that center circle. You're responsible, whether you agree or not, for your attitudes, actions. Now, I'm not talking about drug addiction. I'm not talking about other kinds of things. I'm talking about a general, normal person who has all kinds of hang-ups, like we all are. Isn't that right? So what Jane is saying is when you're proactive, you're in control. Your influence grows. Your feeling, the positive feeling, grows. When you're reactive, you're responding to the stimulus. And there's no space between what you're responding to. Turn to page 8, would you? Can you see that first diagram on the upper left hand? How can I take control of me? The reactive person, there's no space. The proactive person, you have the freedom to choose. You have freedom. I'm responsible for my choices and actions. I can choose my response based on my values. Now, wouldn't this, Janie, be a good time to have them teach to learn?
Excellent. How about if I do that?
Would you do that?
Yes. Now, what we'd like you to do is get in partners. All right? Two at each table. You do that. If three's a natural there, go ahead. 2. Good. All right, you do 3 right there. Now, in your partnerships, somebody be number 1 and somebody be number 2. Would you decide that real fast? Okay. There. All right. I'd like number 1 to teach number 2 what it means to be proactive. And I'd like number 2 to teach number 1 what it means to be reactive. I'm going to give you just a minute. Go. Okay?
Are we making sense?
Yes.
Okay, I felt so. I could see the real. And isn't it a natural thing to be reactive?
Yes.
And people have all kinds of excuses.
Let's talk about this just for a minute more before we leave it. We talk about this because a lot of people say, I can't help it. I'm reactive. It's in the genes. I was born this way. We're Irish. We've all got short fuses. Okay? I've got a short fuse. My father had a short fuse. My grandfather had a short fuse. We just blow up. It's not our fault. It's in the genes. Okay? Some people say, I am reactive because I've only known reactive people. I grew up in a home with people who shouted, hit, yelled, swore, slammed doors, stormed out, gave the silent treatment. I've only known reactive adults. So, of course, I'm reactive as an adult. It's not my fault. Other people say, well, it's either in the genes or it's either the way I grew up or it's my current environment, like the movie of The Nurse. I mean, you look like you come home to a pretty nice guy at night. You ought to see what I come home to. You'd be reactive, too. Or they say, have you met my boss? If you met my boss, you'll know why I'm reactive. You'd be reactive if you had to work for her, too. All right? Or others people say, I am charming. I am the most charming person you've ever met. When that 17-year-old kid of mine walks in the room, I just turn into a witch. I can't help it. Or it's my 3-year-old. I tell him to come, he runs the other direction. He climbs on everything there is on earth. I'm reactive. I'm a screamer. It's not my fault. So what we say is this. We are influenced by our genes. We are. We are influenced by our early environment. We are. We are influenced by our current environment. We are. But we are not determined. As human beings, we are not determined. We can choose. Now, you know, our dogs can't do that. We used to have a little dog named Sadie, and Sadie would bark at everybody who came. And she was a yappy little dog. Nobody liked her but us. We loved her. But she would just yap. The whole time somebody was at the front door. Yeah, yap, yap, yap. And people would say, can't you get that dog to stop? I couldn't. I sat down, looked at a little brown. I said, Sadie, you'd be a lot more popular if you just bark at strangers, not bark at the family. She couldn't. But dogs don't have that ability to choose. We do. We can choose our response based on our values. And it has huge repercussions in our family life. Now, don't be discouraged about this if you tend to be quite reactive. Some people say, I'm just a screamer. I'm sorry. I scream at everybody. Well, you can control that. But this program, or these 7 habits, they're not a Band-Aid. This is a lifetime. This is working. This is becoming aware and working on it for the rest of your life. So don't be discouraged. Yes, Dennis.
How do you explain the public persona and the private persona? Like somebody comes to your house and says, "You've got the greatest kids," and you say, "Huh?" Because you're always. And then I guess when they're out in the public, they're a different person than when they're at home. So how do you explain that difference?
They're always better for strangers.
Is it self-control?
You've explained it beautifully. Perhaps people care about how they're seen. How do you explain? What do you say, Dennis?
Well, apparently they don't like to necessarily want to be seen like they do in the public at home. I don't know, or maybe they just relax their,
We become familiar. We just went to Texas and stayed with our grandchildren for a week. They were model children. And yet their mother would call me up before I ever got there and say, "Ah! Things are hard." We got there, they were perfect. You figure it out, Dennis, and write a book on it, and we'll buy it.
Turn to page 9, and you're looking at stimulus response, and on page 9 you've got 4 unique human gifts. 4 human gifts, and these are gifts you have as a human being. Animals don't have these gifts. Here's the stimulus, here's the response. One gift is you have the gift of self-awareness. You can pull off and realize, I'm getting upset. You can look, it's like a fly on the wall. You can become aware. I'm starting, that is a gift. It needs to be developed. You have also a gift of conscience. You can sense something is wrong. You have the gift of imagination. Dogs would be living in the same things they were living in 2,000 years ago. We can imagine. We can envision something we've never experienced as a human being. And you have independent will. You can make tough choices at very difficult times. Let me just tell you a story. This is a life changer. Go back 40 years, okay? I'm a young man. Well, you can't go back 40 years. Some of you can. But this was the day when the father came home and the mother stayed home, and the father said, "Wear my pipe and slippers." You don't ever relate to that day, perhaps. I came home one time, and Jane, we had a couple of children. I walked in. I looked around at this house, and I said, "This place is a mess. What do you do all day?" Like me, will you? Don't hate me. I was just a young man. I could see that I had hurt her. I could feel that I had hurt her. I didn't want to hurt her. So what I did is I said to myself, I got to change. And the only way I knew how to change is to change me. And so I decided that I was going to push a pause button, and that I was going to rethink. And so I had a driveway, and every time I'd drive into that driveway, I'd stop, pause, get my mind settled, and then say to myself something like this: why do I go to work? I go to work because of what's in there. I want that to be happy. That's why I'm living. That's what gives me the real, permanent joy. And so then I'd walk in, and pardon this little diversion, but I used to always come in and say, "Try to restrain yourself, kids. I'm home." Nobody even ignored me. Then I'd go around all the kids, and I'd say, Hi, Rachel. And Rachel said, "Dad." I said, "Hi, Rachel." "Dad." I said, "What is it?" She said, Dad, get down. So I got down and I looked her right in the eye. And she said, now, say hi, Rachel. Don't your children teach you? Otherwise, don't just brush me off. Look me right in the eye. Then I would go over to Jane, having paused and redone my views and my mindset. I'd say, how can I help you? What a day you must have had. What could I possibly do? So what I want to do is I want us to develop a pause button. Now, we all have a belly button, but I want to develop a pause button, okay? And will you do this for me, please? Will you push your forehead? Now, that seems a little crazy. Imagine you're the thinker, very deep, okay? And be proactive. Take a time out. Take control of me. That's the hand sign. Be proactive. Take control of me. So now, how many would like to grow in this space and become more and more proactive? Okay, that's everybody. So we're going to talk about how to do that. Go back to page 8, will you? Steps to take control of me. They are pause, think, and choose. Now let me say this. Sounds pretty simple, doesn't it? This is the skill training of proactive habit. It's pause, think, and choose. How do you pause? Tell me what you do. When you start, you're self-aware, you're starting to feel like you're getting upset, what do you do?
Take a deep breath.
Take a deep breath? What else do you do? Think. How do you think? What do you mean?
Just relax.
You kind of relax. You take that time out and you just start to step away from the situation. Take time out, step away. And your thinking goes through a variety of kinds of things, doesn't it? Yes. All right. Let's suppose that I have a child and that child is in this room and I'm teaching this class. And
Daddy,
sweetheart,
you told me that you were going to buy me some candy.
Yeah, honey, sweetheart.
You
I've got
told
a
me
class.
as soon as we got here, we were going to get some candy. I
I've
don't
got-
care about
I got
this
the-
class.
I've got a
I
class.
want this right now.
Sweetheart.
You promised that we were going to have some. I could have some candy, and you
Look,
you
don't
never
you
keep
rea-
your promises.
What are
and
my
I want
choices?
some right now. I don't care about this class. I want some right now. You told me I could, and you haven't done it as usual, and I want it right now.
Okay. What are some of my choices? On thinking, what you do is you list your choices. What's some of the choices that I could take right now? Choice 1. Give in. What do you mean? Just, look, here's some candy.
No, I don't like that kind. That won't work.
Okay? So what's the consequence of giving in?
She'll interrupt again. It might happen again.
It might happen again. Or she says, I can go in terms of any situation and do anything I want. Okay, what's another choice I could use?
Raise your voice.
Look, you little... Couldn't I? So I could raise my voice. What's the consequences of raising my voice?
Whatever then,
Pardon?
you continue, arguing.
I could be arguing. And also, what's the consequence with you? Everybody, we want to talk about being proactive. Shut up, you. I mean, am I modeling what we're teaching? Etc., etc. So everything you think about, there's a choice to every consequence. So you pause, get a space, however you do it, and then you choose based upon your deepest values. And hopefully they're principle-centered. Is that making sense? And so what we'd like to do is to have you do that now. Will you please, on page 8, steps to taking control of you, will you write one thing about yourself over which you would like to have more control? And then one thing you can do to pause, one thing you should do or shouldn't do to take control of you, and then what you will choose. Something that you want to work on. I'm going to give you a couple of minutes to fill that out personally. Each one of us will have a different one. because it comes inside us. It's your conscience, it's whatever it is. It's awareness that comes. That's what we want you to be responsive to, is that inner awareness. All right, now, we know this is what we want to do, is pause, think, and choose. Now, let's make it a part of our lives. You have the calendar we've talked about before. Let's go to the calendar and go to that first month. We talked about having that be proactive month. That was going to be the month of June. Will you identify a date that you want to begin to practice whatever you said you were going to do? And how many days does it take to embed a habit consistently? 30 days. So consistent, hard-working effort, 30 days. So kind of go out 30 days and put an X. You're going to begin someplace, and your target date is 30 days out. All right, now let's seal your commitment even more. Will you go to your flight plan? That's the inside back cover with your name on it. And the first commitment we're making, you can put it on the bottom of that flight plan. The first commitment you're making, and I'm just going to ask you to leave just a little space, more than you would, little space, put down there, habit H1, be proactive. That's the commitment. I'm going to work to be more proactive, to take more of that space that is mine, that are my human endowments, my human gifts. Habit 1, be proactive. And on that calendar, if you want to, put as a reminder something you're going to work on, that thing you're going to work on. A calendar is a commitment. All right? Now, I want everybody to stand. Everybody learns differently, but I'm going to have you do the hand signs that I do, okay?
Can I say one word about the hand signs? After every habit, we have a hand sign. Now, these are pretty cheesy, all right?
Hey, really, this was tough.
I'm not as fond of them as John, but a lot of people learn this way, and remember, if it's too embarrassing and you don't like it, it's okay. You can abstain. But for a lot of people, they work. It helps them remember. So we'll go through it.
Okay, here's the idea. Be proactive.
Time out.
Take control of me. You're not taking control of somebody else, me. Can you say that with me? Be proactive. Take control of me. Wonderful. And it's code. You'll get in a family. You want to build a beautiful family culture. And people will say, hey, what do you think that's code for? But don't be so reactive. You with me? Okay. Wonderful.
Sit down. Thank you.
Now, I'm going to ask you, and we'll close this whole video up if you don't agree. How many believe truly that if you're proactive rather than being reactive, you will make better choices that will bring you more happiness? How many believe that? Is that everybody? It's 100%. So I'm going to just check this off, because the 7 habits, the whole role of the 7 habits is to be able to help you make good life choices when you're 3, when you're 10, when you're 15, when you're a grandpa, when you're in business, when you're in school, kids, leader, and me, all over, to make good life choices in every situation. Today, I got up early this morning and I went through proactively what we were going to do. You with me? It helps in every circumstance. I'm convinced that's the reason why we are in 33 different languages and 35 million sold and etc. of Stephen's original book. Well, do you feel okay about be proactive? Are we ready to go on? All right. Let's just go on. Let's see. Do you know where we're ready to go on to?
Ready to take a break.
We're going to take a break.
Yeah.
Is that okay?
Good.
And let's take a 15-minute break and get up and move around, and we'll be back in 15 minutes. Thanks.